my name is Cindy, as you can see in my YouTube. And I realized that the most important video that was happening was beginning gardener. I was a beginning gardener. And it was by sheer happenstance. And if you've looked at that video and you're coming here, you have decided to be a gardener, like I was. So I had an epic fail in my grow room right off the bat. And I straightened that out with hard work. Gardeners are hardworking people, whether it's a small bed, whether it's on a patio, whatever. But there's a lot of confusion, and you'll get so confused and you'll just be like, oh my God, what happened? So I go from the grow room to outside. I live in Colorado. The sun is strong. And in the very beginning, when certain things didn't go the way I had planned for them to go, I wasn't prepared. And so I just put all these cups there. Didn't mark them. Oh no. So I took care of them all equally. I knew I had a lot of tomatoes, I had chili peppers, I had greens, I have all kinds of stuff going on. But I didn't know which one was which. I was like so lost. Oh my God, how can you not mark it? Well, I threw a bunch of seeds in a dome. Well, who marks that? Well, I didn't know. So I want to show you my bed because I want you to see proportionally what's going on. And I'm getting ready for the season, so things are a little weird in the container garden. I have this small of a bed. I have that much deck space. And as you can see, I'm cleaning. Well, last year I was so discouraged by everything that happened. Wasn't gonna do it again, was I? Heck no, broke my heart. So this is the first and foremost tip. Mark them. Use the cheap plastic cups from Walmart, wherever you get them, and begin to put your seed in. Follow the directions on the package. Mark how many cups you want first. Mark the date you want with a Sharpie first. Then begin to plan. No one told me that if I started a tomato on the 2nd of May, that in July, I may not have fruit. So I had all these beautiful tomatoes, beautiful plant. Everything was lush, everything was great. My grow room was on the south facing window. So I needed sun, right? Okay, but that's a bedroom. What am I gonna do? So basically all the big time gardeners were helping me. But there was panic moments. Moments in which I was like, what is this? What's going on? So I got in touch with a few people that I knew I could depend on their advice. The first thing I want you to consider when doing a container garden or a bed garden is space it out right. I mean, literally space it out right. If it says there's 12 inches all the way around, you can do 1 foot if it's upright. So this year, I'm not going into the bed with food. Last year was a nightmare. It was organic. I had one neighbor's wall and the back wall that goes out to Neverland. So here I was. I bought all these containers at 30 cents a piece. I had all these other containers from when I just threw collard greens out there and some cilantro. But this year I'm thinking, okay, I'll just pop them in this container. That doesn't necessarily work because how much root space do you need? How much foliage do you want? Oh no, then you're asking more questions. You're driving yourself crazy. So you feel successful, you have some plants, you want to put them in a small space container and or a bed. And as soon as they come out of the house or you put them out there, the pests begin to come. And in each zone area, I hate the zone thing too, there's particular issues. Like where I live, there's aphid. Slugs were coming from the wall. Okay, that's why I'm just sitting down and having a talk. And I wasn't ready for all that. I mean, I had this beautiful grow room. I went in that dome and separated all those roots. I didn't know what anything was until it got kind of big enough. And then I realized I've got heirlooms in here. So I got 11 hailstorms. So I don't start my garden until Mother's Day, because this is when Colorado stops hailing and raining and such. Another thing, 2 inches of water. What do they mean by that? Okay, well, stick your finger in there and there's 2 inches. You know what the general rule is? Moist. Now, if it's a collard green, or collard greens can take water all day long every day, they're the easiest thing to grow. If it's a Swiss chard, so go back and line your packages up and mark the date on there, and then mark your cups. And then you begin to transition. What's hardening? What's hardening? What does that mean? Hardening is when you transition them from your house to outside. Believe me, believe me, I wasn't prepared for that wind. I wasn't prepared for that sun in Colorado. We're a mile higher. I was not prepared. So each step was so taxing, but I wasn't going to give up. I'm one of those types of people. So say you just even have a porch. Each little thing is important, right? You love your plants. Second, tomatoes go with basil. It protects them. Marigolds help this. This helps that. So you write all this stuff down. Well, then you lose track of it. So expert growers know all this stuff already. Well, we don't. We don't. What's compost? What's mulch? What's potting soil? What kind of potting soil? What do we want? What needs what? Oh my gosh, I'm lost. So you'll spend half your day on the internet trying to figure things out. You watch 52 videos. Drive yourself crazy. So with my paste tomatoes, Roma, they're either considered determinate or indeterminate, right? And so you're like, determinate, what does that mean? It's determined to grow. Indeterminate means it's just going to go on forever, like a cherry tomato. They're just going to go and go and go. Okay, I had to figure that out. So I have tomatoes, and I don't even know what kind they are. I see the packages, but I don't know which plant is which. So I get it outside, it gets hit with hail. I'm devastated. I am devastated. Then, how much water do I give them? And why can't the soil splash up? What's the big deal? I mean, it's a leaf, right? The purpose of that is that what's ever on the surface in a container or a garden, it's going to hit up on those leaves, and you're going to get scorchy and all kinds of weird things. Okay, so I use a Canadian potting soil. I love this stuff. It's amazing. $10 a bag, okay? And 3 bags will suffice you. So they say amend your soil. Well, what does that mean? Okay, how do I know what pH? How do I know what's in that garden bed? All I know is I put dirt in there. I scooped it up and turned it. I had hand tools, so I couldn't do what they were doing. They had it perfectly in a row. It all looked beautiful. They had stuff piling up on top. Why did they do that? So this is what I've learned thus far. Mark your cups. If you start them in the house early, space it out. Because if something's blooming at 30 days and you're getting fruit, then you want a 40 and then a 50. So when you start in the winter and you want to start pre-planting, so when they go outside they're ready to be happy, you can literally space that out. Fruit in 30 days. Okay, tomatoes need X amount of days. 50 days I want flowers to come up. 60 days I need my companion planting. Okay, 70 days, 80 days. Okay, well, if you think about spring and summer, you've only got X amount of time. So I pre-start tomatoes, chili peppers, and many other things. And so go with easy plants first. Don't go into these crazy particular kinds of tomatoes, and everybody wants to grow tomatoes. I do, because I want a can. So last year was a nightmare. So I go outside one day after the 11 hailstorms, and I see these beautiful flowers, and I'm like, oh my God, my tomatoes are working. They started to grow. I would check the little fruit every day, and it was just beautiful. They were red. Nobody told me when I transplanted those tomatoes to go only so deep. And then when you put that first beginning soil, you can sprinkle these crystals that help jumpstart the transplant. They didn't tell me how to put the cup in there. So I spread it out, and I kind of pull a little bit, a few of the roots. I put that little crystal stuff, okay? And then I put some fertilizer in the potting soil, mix that up, okay? And all this is moist soil. So in other words, I've moistened, and you don't want heavy water, okay? Because you'll drown the roots. And so you put that in, then you begin to put soil in. Well, plants love a light soil. They just do. They don't want heavy dirt. And I've seen people around the corner who do heavy dirt, and it's just insane what they deal with. So we want a light, I think they call it loamy. It kind of looks like loomy, but it's loamy soil. You want it to have all its nutrients, right? But then you have to know what each plant likes. So you'll go buy a fertilizer, and it's a 5-4-3, 7-4-5, 6-6-7 to 10-10-10. Okay. And they'll say, feed your plants. Feed them what? Water? So I make up a couple gallons, and I put exactly as the directions specify, organic sea kelp. And I shake it. The first time I didn't shake it. So you shake it, add that into your gallon. Don't splash it. Always water a plant around the edge. Around the edge. And the way I know the inches is I can tell by the soil. Then I loosen the soil at the top, and that's the way I keep them when they're growing at all times. Now, then the pests come, but you don't see that. See this beautiful plant growing. Oh, it's great. Maybe not. So as soon as I took my garden outside, everybody's like, get ready for the pests. And I'm like, what pests? I don't see anything. Well, I had aphids in there. So I had some Chinese cabbage out there, the cabbage I love, and they were just getting nailed. And I was like, what do I do? So I went down and got me a organic, pesticide. I didn't want to use GMOs. So, and you might go with pesticides, that's fine. Then I find out you can use soap in there, you can put baking soda. I mean, there's just so many things. So the first thing to understand is how to space it out so it fruits, because when all my tomatoes hit, I was picking them every day. So I look out there and there's these red tomatoes. And I'm like, you're doing great. Then it was suckers. What do you do with those suckers? It's a whole nother thing. Then how far are they going to grow up, and how do I string them up? There's people that string them up. There's people that stake them. There's people in container. There's people out in a garden bed. I mean, it's just everybody, right? So you're always on YouTube trying to see what they're doing. So for my tomatoes, I know they need a big pot. Not one this big, but they need a decent height, because these suckers get tall. And they grow all kinds of funky. They turn corners. They do all kinds of weird stuff. So I needed to amend the soil. I needed compost. Didn't make my own compost. I don't even know how to do that. It takes too much time. I had other things to deal with. I have chili peppers, which, by the way, I'm a really good chili pepper grower. And I have all this food going on. And so I plant 150. Now I have to adjust that sun, plus it hits the fence. So some things are direct sunlight. I'll put DS on the cup. Then I put it on a popsicle stick and stick it in the dirt. So I remember which one's which. Does it need direct? So I can shovel things, move things around in the deck space to understand how much sun they're going to get. So where do I put my tomatoes? Where half the day there's shade. That's not good. They love sun. Chili peppers, the ones in the ground, didn't do so great. The ones in the containers did really, really well. Okay, but when you're first growing a chili pepper in the grow room or in the house, you'll begin to see little flowers. Take them off. Do not let them produce fruit until they're outside. I don't care how big it is, because what will happen to you is you'll begin to let them get the fruit, and then you'll get like, oh my God, I'm so excited, let them go. Well, the ones in the garden bed, I let go. Well, didn't do that too good. Then I get hit with slugs, leaf miners, aphid, everything you can think of. The only thing I didn't get hit with was those tomato worms. I didn't get those. I didn't get worms in my containers. But this is another issue with containers. Remember, when you're putting the water in there, it's taking the nutrient and pushing right through every day. So then you have to get on a feeding schedule. When do they need fertilizer? So I get a big cardboard and I date it. Okay? So I knew when they got their extra food. But when you're transplanting, you can literally sprinkle things where their roots are at. That way, from the beginning, they're getting some food that they like. Some like more calcium, some like nitrogen, some like this, some like that. Then you have to deal with diseases. So as things were going, so this year I decided I'm going to make my own soil. I'm determined. I amend the soil. And what do I bring into my grow room? Mold. Not going to work so much for me, is it? So I had to ditch all my tomatoes. Now, everybody was giving me different solutions. That frustrated me. So guess what I did? I threw them over the side of the fence. I said, we're going to do this right. and we're going to make it happen. And I want 10 paste tomatoes because that's what I'm going to jar. And I'll maybe do a cherry tomato, but I don't have the space. And I don't have the trellising, and I don't have the string, and I don't have this, and I don't have that. And some needs more sun. So as you're planning this whole thing, get things that are easy to grow. Don't get the most difficult plant in the world and then it goes south, because you'll just die. It'll kill you. So last year in June, I just sat on the step and said, I give up. After 11 hailstorms, every disease, every pest, oh my God, here we go. Now, I didn't know you can make a calcium slur. Okay? So those lime pellets are really important for tomatoes. So you can go to Home Depot and get lime pellets. And you can make it in a 5-gallon container. I could give you the ratios, but I'd have to go back and research. And you put so many lime pellets and melt them in a thing of water, 5-gallon bucket, and you want them to have that like a lot. So you have to figure that out too. So not only are you feeding them a fertilizer, and some people go with 10-10-10. Other gardeners go with a 6-4-7, a 7-4-5, a 6, and they'll drive you crazy. So you want to get a good sturdy fertilizer. Now they had given me 2 bags of free fertilizer. Now this year I'm not purely organic as far as not allowing meats and eggshells and all those things in the garden. So you get the lime pellets, you put it in a 5-gallon bucket, swish it around, and give them a big drink of calcium. They just love it. They can never get enough. Okay, we don't want to saturate the soil too much. They just need to be moist. Okay, so if you're not realizing and they're getting bigger and you're feeding them less water, they're not going to be happy. Plus, in containers, it goes out the bottom. So that didn't really feed them all that much, did it? So what I do is I'll feed them their 575, 765, 675. I use a seaweed kelp. And I've also seen people put seaweed in water and feed them that way, which is just straight up good. So I got the lime pellets, which was like 10 pounds. And I put a scoop of that in some calcium. And it went like this with my finger. And I started feeding my tomatoes. Well, they're red. One day I'm bent down, I look up and I see a dark spot. And I'm thinking it's a pest. I look up and all my tomatoes at the bottom are rotted. How could this be? So I took them all off, scared to death, and bring them in the house, and they're green. And then some of them are green, some of them are red. Some of them rotted all the way. And I couldn't see it. There was just too many tomato plants. So the important thing is plan. If you want to do the square foot thing, use string so that way you don't get mixed up. Unless you want to do little popsicle sticks, and then you'll see what's in that space. And companion plant them. Now, I'm going to use that whole bed for flowers. I've never grown flowers like this. I thought annuals meant they come back every year. No, perennials do. Because when you're cramming all that information in your head, you're becoming a learning curve. So it's becoming more difficult. So watering, what to do when you see a pest. So I got this book at the thrift store, and it was just the 101 gardening, how to garden. And she was amazing. She gave me like the basic information. So that way when I wanted to refresh something, I could go back to her. But I had all these friends on Google Plus, and they were expert gardeners. Now they get busy in the spring, so they might not answer you. And sometimes you're confused about what's going on. So you'll see your foliage, it's great. You take them outside, things start to go wrong, or maybe you just started, and so this is going to grow, that's going to grow. And then you see these expert gardeners with huge watermelons, giant-sized tomatoes, and you're trying to figure out what they're doing. My basic thought on tomatoes is be careful how you transplant and how far down. Make sure the soil is very rich in nutrients. Soil is everything in this game. You can get Miracle-Gro and add things to it. Some people use urea. Some people use limestone. Some people use vermiculite. What are you going to do? I mean, there's just so much information. And so you'll go with your steady Eddie people. So as things were progressing in the garden, I could see why those timetables were important. I could see why I was harvesting like every day. I could see that because I was harvesting so much that the collard greens went left turn. And these were the steady Eddie collard greens I had grown every year, real big ones. Okay, well, I wanted to grow those. So I had picked the wrong seed, but that's a whole nother story. And then everybody starts saving the seeds. Well, I don't know how to do that yet. I'm dealing with the 42 disasters outside. In the morning, you want to get a sprayer or a garden bucket, and you want to water them around the edge and try not to stay around the stem. When you're transplanting, lay those nutrients in that bottom half, whether you're putting them halfway up in the container or you're doing a third, okay? Know how deep to put these things, different plants, because they need the root growth, and roots are like babies. They need a certain amount of water, a certain amount of nutrients to take it all the way up to the plant. Then we want our fruit to be good, don't we? And so a tomato has fruit, chilies have fruit, they all have fruit, everything's fruiting, yay, yay, yay. So all my tomatoes took a left turn. I just didn't want to deal with it. By the time I realized it was a fungus, it was just among us and I needed it to stop. So I tossed them all over the site and called it a day. The most other important tip is when you're done at the season and you're in your first year and you're so burned out on containers and you don't understand what's going on and you have just struggled, and you don't know anything about gardening. You know, you just grew a couple things and that's all you know. There's propagation, there's this or that. Okay, clean your containers when you dump it on the side of the fence, which is what I would suggest, or put it in a big thing, trash can, whatever, and leave it there and put it somewhere for the winter and take the plant itself out, roots and all, and throw it somewhere. And then keep that soil and you might be able to use it for starter soil. However, remember, it rained, so it leached the soil. It went through and all the nutrients went out. Then you could add your compost to that soil and then you know what kind of soil you had. Where did I throw the soil? Into the garden bed. Guess what was in the garden bed? Fungus. So the spores came into the house, went up to the grow room, and now my tomatoes that I've been growing forever, that were beautiful and big, have now become destroyed, and I didn't want to deal with it. So clean those containers impeccably. So what I did was I made a really light bleach water, and I went on the inside and the outside, rinsed them off really good. Then I got a really, really light dish soap. They say immerse them. I didn't do that. And just wipe it clean and let it dry out in the sun before you start to transplant. So don't put your containers away dirty, because you'll have a mess on your hands the next year. And where you precisely put things is where they precisely will get sun. So some will produce, and those tomatoes got huge. And I had them lined up like right next to each other because I had so many. So you have to be really careful. You have to be able to see them and look around them. So when you're doing container gardening, it seems easier because they're in a pot. When really, in effect, if you're in a garden bed or raised garden, you're going to understand what's in there. But for me, I didn't know. So I had to learn step by step. And here I am late at night trying to kill slugs. Nobody told me to use copper. Nobody told me how to do that. So I had to handpick them out and use beer traps. Okay, this year I'm going to have more of an advantage because I'm not so organic. But I'm using great seed and I'm using great soil. So now I have to go buy 4 more bags of soil and fertilize that whole thing. So you want to get a 5-gallon bucket. If you have some powder fertilizer, mix that all in there real good in that 5-gallon bucket, and then add your water, moisten it, put it in your pots, transplant, sprinkle the sprinkle stuff. I don't know what they call it where you're at, but I forgot the name because somebody gave it to me. And I sprinkle a few little granules. I don't dip my soil in water like a lot of people do. I just spread out north, south, east, and west on the bottom, and then I thread out some of the roots so they can kind of get established. My plants never go through transplant shock, ever. Then I begin transplanting as the time period. So if I have 80 days, those are going to get transplanted first. Then I have the 70 days. Those are going to get transplanted 10 days later. Then I have some, 70, 60, 50, 40s. Then I want that in a 10-day spread to transplant. So when I take them out there, they're going to go in a sequence. Okay? That way you can keep your eye out on all the plants, get to know each plant, and you're going to find your area and expertise. You're going to be like, I'm a great tomato grower, or I'm a great, green cabbage grower, whatever the case may be. Last year, I was foraging as I went, so I dropped some bulbs, some onion bulbs in there. And what did I do? I forgot all about them because I didn't mark them. So I didn't know where the onion was. Oops. Now, I know you think I'm stupid, but the truth is I was just getting TMI in my head, and I was trying to keep track. So planning, organizing, cleaning, keeping an eye, spacing, and growing things with things. So you want tomatoes, but you want some marigolds. You want tomatoes, but you want some basil, because that's companion planting. And I sometimes will stick the basil right in the pot, but then the basil starts to go left turn on you. Then you lose your basil. So I have small pots. That's what I'm going to do my basil in. I have flower pots, but I have the garden bed, and I can pre-start them in the pots. And then each flower needs different things, just like the food does. So, and then I have microgreens. Yeah. And then I have these beautiful big, like they show up once and you never see them again. And then they said, dig up your tomato plants and put them back in the grow room. Biggest mistake I ever made. I'm not doing that ever again. So this is the stuff that happened to me in the beginning, and I wish somebody would have told me. Like humic acid helps the roots kind of suck up stuff. So when you lay that little bit of soil and you're going to transplant, you're going to put it on a popsicle stick with a Sharpie saying, this is the kind of tomato it is, or this is the kind of chili it is. And I know by the last names like Santa Fe, jalapeno, serrano. If you don't like chili peppers, you're not going to grow them. Tomato plants. Well, you want to know if that's an early girl, or is that a Roma, or is that a beefsteak? I'm not into beefsteaks yet because I don't like beefsteaks. So I'm doing all paste so I can jar. So for me, if somebody would have said that ahead of time, it would have really helped me a lot. And I wouldn't have had to ask so many other questions that I could have just been proficient at. Also, if you're a gardener, you learn patience. So sun, water, transplant, picking seed, growing things that are easier so you can get the swing of things. And in containers, you're going to deal with leaching. And you also want to keep your containers extremely clean. Now, because what happens is pests get out there and they'll attach to the outside of it. So I always wiping. And I check the trays also. If there's a lot of salt, then I know something's wrong. So everybody pH tests and I don't. I just don't. I can tell. This year, I will not have bottom end rot. That will not happen to me. It just won't happen. It devastated me. It was cracking. There was inconsistencies in watering. There was inconsistencies with nutrients because I didn't shake it, remember? So when you have 6 tomato plants and you know each one is going to get a cup of fertilizer or your nutrients and your liquid, and you're not the slow release ones, they have those too, and you can do that too. Remember, tomatoes are going to need extra calcium. They love it. Maybe the roots have been damaged. The leaf is not doing what you want it to do. It's not that lush, green, furry touch. With chili peppers, be careful because you want them to lop it off so they can bush out. My father grows chilies all year round, but he has the weather to do so. I don't. So when everything is producing, you want to address each and everything on a different level. And you want to make sure those container sizes are right. So if it's going to go into a 12-inch container, well, how far do I put it in? Because some need to go up high and some need to go low. So what I do is now I'm doing a flower bed. And they're like, well, these in the back need to be high. Then you need your color combo. Okay, look, I'm not that great of a flower grower. Okay, can I just take it one step at a time? So I did sweet peas all along the edge. That does not mean that they won't get slugs. That does not mean they won't get pests. But it's a very easy plant. A lot of people do it, and it needs to be trellised up. So I can use some string and lightly pull them and train them to go up that wall. Okay, fine, whatever. The next row is going to be verbena, and then the next row, and in the center, I'm going to put a tomato cage and have a sweet pea coming up the top. That would be really cool. So each plant needs different things. How do you keep track of it? How do you know how much water? What container size do I use? And I wish I would love to tell you right now. But I can tell you with my 14 and 16 and even 5-gallon buckets, you're going to get a better tomato. Plus, you can move them around. So if you're a container gardener like I am, and maybe you start in the grow room, maybe you're just starting, know these things right off the bat. Be able to go with your instincts. And if you check underneath the leaf too, Don't just look at the top like I did and say it's all green and it's all happy, and then I get under each plant and go, oh, there's something else going on there. I checked the leaves. I put my finger on them and touched them. Yellowing. What is that? And there's actually a diagram. You can see yellowing down here means this, yellowing in the center means that, yellowing on the top means this. So you do those adjustments. And every day I look at each thing individually. I have an onion bed now, which means they can stay out there till the very end of the season, and then I can dig them up and dry them out. Also, with garlic, that's an amazing one too. So they can all be raised up between flowers, which means I can sink them down. They'll grow. They'll become a garlic, and the scapes up top. You can eat those as you go. So these things are important. I started seed, onions with seed. That's not the preferred way to go. Probably want to start with bulbs first. I go through a lot of onion. I like onion. I like a lot of garlic. So I'm not a garlic farmer, but I would like to see those garlics do well and grow. So in the very beginning, if someone had told me, don't take on too much, I probably would have had not as many failures, but I learned a lot. And I know that beginning gardening is really, really important. And so I'm a beginning gardener, second year. I'm working out that horrible bed. Even though the soil's been amended, found out that they were low in calcium, that I was hitting clay. My container part needs to be kept impeccably. I need to constantly remember what's going on with each plant, knowing how much sun it has, and to really prepare for weather conditions. So you want to have a tarp if you're a container gardener, or you need something. You can't put a towel over each one. So I have a piece of tarp that I can throw over the whole square deck in case I get a weather condition that I don't want. I didn't want a lot of rain. Once in a while is fine. And I didn't want any hail. So literally my stumps got taken down to here and I had to start all over. By that time the soil was depleted. It didn't have any nutrients. And these poor little guys are trying to live. Most plants, I would say 99.9% of them, they want to grow. Now, are they growing in the right condition? Maybe not. So basil's fun. Rosemary didn't produce as much as I wanted, but then again, it was in the garden bed. Basil did great to a certain extent, and then it started taking a left turn on me. Onions, garlic, flower bed now, and just in the container, I'm going to manage those plants and make sure they're healthy and happy, and each one is going to get a separate thing. Chili peppers like one thing, and tomatoes like another thing. So you can't buy all these different fertilizers. So you want a basic fertilizer, and then you want separate entities to gather. I also watched somebody last year get their compost, put in a 5-gallon bucket, put some water in it, put a little lid on it, stirred it up, and used a compost tea. So they're always getting something rich. I was inconsistent with that. So there's different ways that everybody does it, and you need to find your steady Eddie people. And when you do that, you'll learn so much. But at the end of June and July, or maybe even August, you might just sit down and go, I can't do this anymore. It's driving me bananas. Hang in there, get your second year under your belt, first year, and you're good to go. I have another video on my channel, Cindy Lou, and it's like every gardening tip from the beginning, because I was clueless. So congratulations, you're a gardener. Congratulations, every month is important, every day is important. And I hope these tips have helped you understand a discussion. Write down your questions if you're not sure about something. And I know you get to the garden center and you've got it all planned out, and then you get home and it's just not what it's supposed to be. I don't pre-buy plants. I grow from seed, so that's how I approach that. But this year, because of the tomato situation, I'm gonna have to go and buy some because I can't just start from seed again. I won't get fruit until who knows. Okay, so it's June, July, August, September. That's not gonna work. So I'm gonna have to go buy some. But I wasn't willing to go through the fungus. It took a week of my time, which delayed outside, which delayed me being prepared. And that's what you've seen on the patio. So good luck. If you have any questions and you're like, what does that mean again? Then maybe, I can make another video, and then we'll have a series of videos that people can come and see. And that's what makes gardening great, is that we share information. But some of the big time gardeners don't have time to check in with you every day and babysit you. So get on Google Plus. Start learning how to use that. It's not like Facebook. Get to know some people. Hughes Nursery, ML Gardener. I mean, Gary with the Rustic Garden. I mean, Alberta Urban Garden. These are all people that I've asseted. There's Praxis. There's Voodoo Garden. There's so many people that help me. But this year I'm a little bit more independent. And when I get into a pickle, I have to learn things. So this year, my fun is the left side of the garden. I don't know, probably might fail. I said that last year too, and everything did great. And on the right side, I'm gonna grow food, and I want my collard greens, and I want my kale, and I want my chard, and those are things I eat a lot, and they're not that hard to grow. Your pests, look in your area and see what it's ravaged by. We have an aphid issue here, and aphids can do damage. Don't forget ladybugs. They are awesome. You buy 1,000 of them for a couple bucks, and you can cover that with a trash bag, and they will literally eat aphids within minutes. I mean, ladybugs are awesome. If you're growing for bees and them to come into your garden to eat, that's awesome too. That's another political thing, is let's keep our bees alive. So these are all my tips. I hope it helps, and just leave a question at the bottom and I'll answer it, or a comment. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I definitely learned some lessons last year. So let's grow food. Yay! Good soil, good fertilizers. Keep track. Write a notebook.